Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new program called Joy, Love, and Abundance. This is a new podcast and radio show. It's designed to lift you up and explore the people, organizations, and experiences that create a more joyful, loving, and abundant world. I'm Cyrus-Webb. Many of you know me as the host of Conversations Live here on the radio dial, but I'm joined for Joy, Love, and Abundance with my co-hosts, Rodney-Eric-Lopez and Patrice-Tanaka. Together, we'll be sharing stories and insights, both from inside and outside the mainstream, that will hopefully inform and inspire you. Patrice, Rodney, I'm so excited about this very first episode of Joy, Love, and Abundance.
Yay! Yes.
This is very exciting. Yes, very happy to be kicking this off with you both.
Well, look, I totally agree, and I should say to our audience, hopefully they are, at this point, settling into 2021 and finding some joy, love, and abundance for themselves. So maybe before we get into our features for this week, everyone, maybe we should talk a little bit about this year. Patrice, I'll start with you. And for those who may have missed my conversation with Patrice on Conversations Live, the idea for Joy, Love, and Abundance actually came from Patrice. So, Patrice, what about you? I mean, how is this new year feeling for you?
Well, last week was probably the most horrible week that I can ever remember in life. But because I am a radical optimist, I choose to see, what happened as a way to unearth the problems that we have as a country and to shine a light on them and to finally address them. And so that's a good thing. So I'm, very hopeful about what 2021 will bring. And I'm a big believer in the choices that we make to create what it is that we want to fill our lives with. So my choice this year, as it has been in, the past 18 years, has been to choose joy, love, and abundance. And I believe we always have a choice. So that's what I would choose for 2021. And I expect it to be a kind of spectacular year.
Yeah, I agree with that. Rodney, what about yourself? How are you settling into the new year?
2020 was a year that I want to say that the world went into with an incredible amount of optimism, expectation, this idea that 2020 was going to be the year of vision, of perfect vision, and a manifestation of all that was going to be good in our world. And I think that what we learned is that even with that kind of expectation and intention, the world and the universe can throw you a curveball. And 2020 was just such a year of ups and downs, probably more downs on the downside of the ledger than the ups. We lost so many important and notable people. We are still dealing with the outcomes of a global pandemic, and it has just been a very tumultuous year. So what I go into 2021 with is a profound sense of humility, a profound sense of understanding and empathy that while we want to always make sure that we're holding high standards for ourselves and our lives and our communities, that we also want to do so with a certain amount of grace and humility, and understand that the world doesn't always conform to our expectations of it, but that we can still walk into it with joy, with love, with abundance. As Patrice said, understanding that we can't really predict, but we can choose how we want to meet the challenges that face us.
Yeah, I can so appreciate that. For me, it was kind of a year I felt a couple conflicting things, and I've actually never talked about this on the radio before, so it's great to have an opportunity to do that. 2020 I went into the year, it's going to be a busy year for me with my radio show and my TV show. And, of course, I was able to cover some great events at the beginning of the year, traveled to Los Angeles and covered Grammy Week and NAACP Image Award Week. And so it started off really good. And then by March, of course, I started hearing more and more about the coronavirus. And so I suspended my travel. Professionally, ironically, guys, 2020 was probably my best professional year in 5 years. because so many opportunities opened up for me because I was home and in one place. My relationship with Amazon expanded, and so I had that. But then on the other side, Rodney, to your point, I did feel a little bit of embarrassment and guilt, I have to say, because I did lose friends of mine. I mean, literally had friends die during the year due to COVID. And while I was doing well for myself, there was this weird feeling of, do you even talk about the fact that you're doing well? When there's so much happening. Then of course with everything else that was going on in the world, right? It was such a strange thing. So it was a very weird balancing act for me. To be honest with you guys, I mean, it was. I was very protective of my family, my mother, and both my stepdad are getting older. So of course, watching over them, making sure they're not trying to do too much, and taking care of them and keeping them informed of what's going on. So it was an interesting year for me. On the outside, it was, again, like I said, one of the best years I've had in years. But I had a lot of internal struggles that I dealt with. Can you guys relate to that any? Did you guys find yourselves, because Patrice, I know you had a lot going on too in 2020. Did you feel that tug of war of, like you were talking about, having the joy, love, and abundance, but also realizing that not everyone was having it as easy?
I know. I felt exactly as you did. In fact, I went to see my astrologer for my annual reading. This is in July. Don't judge me. But I've been going to this astrologer for 20 years, and he's a lovely, lovely person. And he took one look at me, and he's looking at my chart, and he said, COVID really becomes you. He said, I've never said that to another client. And I said, you know what? That's what I've been thinking too, because all I've been doing is focusing on living my life purpose, which is to choose joy, to be mindful of that joy, and to share that joy with others. And this is what I had been doing for 18 years, and I just continued to live my life purpose last year. And my choices were different ones just because of everything that was going on. So like you, I felt that 2020 was probably my most productive and profitable and positive year in the last 5 years that, since I started Joyful Planet. So I know what you're saying, Cyrus. And that's why I really believe that we create a lot of the reality that we want to live in. And, I have been accused of being somewhat Pollyanna-ish, and I am, but that's how I get through life.
And Cyrus, I want to say that, I had the joy of watching this past year unfold for you via social media, and I know sort of one of your hashtags is this idea of gloves off, right? That you were stepping into this past year with just these incredible opportunities opening up for you professionally, and I am glad that you named that. Sometimes success can also bring this idea of maybe a little bit of shame, like is this for me? Do I deserve this when there's so much difficulty and suffering in the world? And I just want to affirm that that success that came to you this year and continuing to come this year is coming because of the hard work you put in, on the ground, because you didn't start with all of these wonderful shows and programmings and all of that. You worked hard over years to build that, and now you're reaping the rewards of that. And so while it's natural to feel some hesitance around it, I'm also just claiming for you and naming and affirming for you that you're reaping the results of years of hard work. And so just congratulations to you and all that you're experiencing right now.
I appreciate that. And we definitely, for our audience out there, whether you guys are joining us on the radio dial or via the podcast, we'd love to know for you. I mean, how was your 2020 and how is that affecting the way you're looking at 2021? For those who are joining us on the radio dial, please feel free on the post on social media to be able to comment, let us know that. For those who are joining us via the podcast, we'd love to know your thoughts in the comments as well. We'd love to be able to celebrate with you maybe some of the highs that you were able to have in 2020, but also affirm for you, as Patrice and Rodney were just doing here, what can be for you for 2021. Patrice, you made it very clear with this show that you really wanted this to be about joy, love, and abundance, not just in a name, but also in highlighting some amazing individuals, as I even read, that was literally from the great introduction kind of this program that Rodney came up with, being able to explore people, organizations, and experiences that create a more joyful, loving, and abundant world. You had a great organization that you wanted to spotlight this for our very first week. Patrice, talk to us about that.
Yes, thank you, Cyrus. I'm always excited when I can talk about my beloved Girl Scouts. Girl Scouts is probably my longest affiliation ever because I was a Girl Scout since I was a Brownie at age 5, and I continue to serve the Girl Scouts. In fact, I'm the longest serving trustee for our council, the Girl Scouts of Greater New York. We represent all of the Girl Scouts in the 5 boroughs of New York City. And one of the things, this just happened recently, Steph Curry, and I'm not a big sports fan, but even I know who Steph Curry is.
Right.
He did a tweet, talking about our Troop 6000, and Troop 6000 is a relatively new effort. We have created Girl Scout troops in homeless shelters in New York City, and it started in one homeless shelter 3 years ago, and now we've expanded the program so we have troops in 20 homeless shelters throughout the 5 boroughs of New York City. And so the woman who started this troop in that first homeless shelter was actually a staffer of our Girl Scout Council who found herself temporarily homeless and living in a homeless shelter and decided, well, I've got to try to normalize this experience for my girls. She had 5 girls, and actually if you have 5 girls, you can create your own Girl Scout troop. So she started a Girl Scout troop in the homeless shelter that she was staying at and invited other girls of Girl Scouting age to join them. So that was the start. Now, Giselle, who came up with this great idea to start this troop, Troop 6000, is one of these. She's a Girl Scout through and through. So she looked at her surroundings, and it's not great living in a homeless shelter, but she decided to make the best of a bad situation and started this troop. And now we have troops in 20 homeless shelters, and our goal is to try to have troops in every homeless shelter in the city. And so anyone who wants to help fund this program, please, it's Troop 6000 for Girl Scouts of Greater New York. Anyway, Giselle and Nikita Stewart, who's a journalist for the New York Times, wrote a book called Troop 6000, and Steph Curry actually just tweeted out that he's featuring the book Troop 6000 in he has a Stephen Curry's book club on Literati or literati.com, and so it's the featured book for this month. And I just think that it's so great what Giselle did, just choosing to create a more joyful experience for her girls and other girls living in that homeless shelter, and because of that, creating that experience for many more girls in shelters throughout the city. And I know we're interested in expanding the program nationally and having other councils replicate what we've done here in New York City. So I guess, that's what I mean by choosing joy. She didn't choose to live in a homeless shelter, but she chose the experience that she wanted to create for the time that she was living in that homeless shelter. So I want to give a shout out to Giselle Burgess and to my Girl Scout Council, Girl Scouts of Greater New York, for this amazing program, Troop 6000. And in fact, right now it's a Girl Scout cookie season, and because of COVID, all of our cookie sales are digital. So Troop 6000 actually has its own cookie sale. So anyone who wants to buy cookies to support Troop 6000 can go to our council website, Girl Scouts of Greater New York, and then look for Troop 6000, and you'll be able to order cookies. But anyway, thank you for asking, because it just so happened that, Steph Curry tweeted this out in the past few days, and I just noticed it, and it's like, oh my God, this is great. So
that really is great, Patrice. And I should say shout out to Girl Scouts NYC, who then retweeted your tweet. I saw that before we went on the air here.
Yes.
so shout out to them for sure. And Patrice, I'll make sure to get that link from you for the cookies, because we can put that with the podcast link for those who are joining us via the podcast as well. I do have a question for you, Patrice. Hearing you talk about that, I think that is such an inspiring story, and those are the things that I think remind us, right, even in a time like we've been living in with all the challenges of what we can overcome. Do you look at that example, especially now it being a book with Nikita Stewart, with that book, Troop 6000, another example of being able to show, especially young girls who sometimes don't get the opportunities they deserve, what they can do too?
Yes, and that's why this program is so near and dear to my heart. We have many fabulous programs, but this one really speaks to our desire to serve all girls in New York City, including the most underserved girls. And that's exactly who lives, in homeless shelters. And so this is, by bringing Girl Scouting to girls living in homeless shelters, what we're really providing them is a glimpse into the greater world and a future that they might not think is available to them right now, living in a homeless shelter, but is truly available to them, with the support of Girl Scouts and all the girls and women who want to see young girls succeed, because our mission is to build girls of courage, confidence, and character who make the world a better place. And I support Girl Scouts because I view it as our biggest pipeline for our next generation women leaders. And we need more women leaders seated at every leadership table. So I am a passionate, fervent believer of the Girl Scouts.
Yeah. Rodney, did you have a question or comment on Patrice's feature?
I just feel like, Patrice, what you've outlined there in telling that story is that there really isn't a circumstance or a situation that a person can't overcome with a dose of optimism, but more importantly, determination to overcome a difficult situation, but also turn it around to the benefit of others. I mean, it's such a wonderful example of someone being service oriented for the greater good of their community. I think that's what makes just your story so timely and important and inspiring, and it rises to national prominence as a result.
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you. I agree.
Without a doubt. Rodney, what about you? What would you like to share with our audience this week? What feature did you find that caught your attention?
Interestingly enough, the story that I'd like to kind of shine a spotlight on has a lot of parallels with Patrice's story. There are some really interesting similarities in the story. I'd like to shine the light on a young man named Kyler Nipper from Las Vegas, Nevada. I found this story, or rather, I should say, the story came to me about 4 days ago. It was on the national news, and it caused me to want to dig a little deeper and learn a little bit more about his story. In 2016, Kyler was 11 years old and got into an altercation with someone else over the sneakers that he was wearing. He was only 11 years old, and in this altercation, tragically, was stabbed in the chest. Just over a dispute over the shoes he was wearing on his feet. And imagine being 11 years old and being so brutally attacked over something so seemingly insignificant as footwear. You can imagine that would cause significant trauma. And it did, and he did, and continues to deal with the PTSD of that moment. But thankfully, he survived that moment, and has received lots of both mental health care and obviously medical care as a result of that. But what fascinates me about this story is that he converted that very violent act into an opportunity for service, and he created a nonprofit organization called Kyler's Kicks, Kyler's Kicks Shoes, which is a nonprofit organization that's dedicated to providing new and gently used shoes to local schools, homeless shelters, veterans organizations, rehab centers, and mental health and youth organizations in the Las Vegas area. And I feel like, for me, that's an incredible example of someone who took an experience that was just so difficult, and he could have retreated into himself, into his family, and into his own inner world, and stayed there. But what I find extremely inspiring about this story is that he metabolized that situation and converted it into an opportunity for service. Now, just to make sure that our listeners don't think that this is a happily ever after story just yet, as a result of that experience, and even in the years and months that followed, his family had to incur a lot of medical debt to help with his recovery, to help with his mental health support as a result of that. And the family wound up being homeless for a time. And so it took a while to kind of get out of this situation, but through that, he continued to serve. And so he created another initiative out of being homeless called the Kyler's Kicks Lounge. And this was a space where children with mental health problems can come and just relax and play and find community. And so what I find incredibly inspiring about this young person is that here he is, this is just a few years later. He's just 15 years old at this point, and has created an organization that is really dedicated to giving back, and at this point has given away over 37,000 pairs of shoes to people in his community. And what made the national news the other night is that, just like in Patrice's story about how a story can make its way to a celebrity of national prominence, this story found its way to a person who I remember growing up and watching on TV, David Copperfield, the internationally renowned magician. And he was so moved by Kyler's story that he agreed to pay for his family's rent for a year. Wow. Because he was so moved by this act of service and personal triumph. And so I think, just like with Patrice's story, sometimes you don't know. You just don't know when a situation is going to challenge you. But if you can get to the other side and find acts of gratitude and generosity, then abundance shows up for you, sometimes in ways that you can't even expect or anticipate or predict. And so for me, this is an abundant story that just is absolutely moving, because we have a young person who turned an act of violence and trauma into an act of service, and he and his family were taken care of by the universe. And so I just think this is a wonderful, wonderful story that inspired me this week.
Yeah. Patrice, any thoughts on that?
Well, I love the fact that Kyler was 11. He was only 11 when, that incident happened to him. And despite, the PTSD and the pain and suffering he experienced, he turned it into something beautiful to help so many other children. I mean, the impact of his young life, I can't even imagine what he's going to do, in the future years of his life. Quite an amazing individual. I love that story.
Me too.
And you can support that. I found his website. It's kylerskicks.org with a K, KYLERS, KICKS.org. And this is not an organization that any of us are affiliated with, but certainly, if you're moved by that story, please support Kyler's Kicks, support Troop 6000 with the Girl Scouts. But these are wonderful stories of generosity and abundance.
Yeah, for sure. And guys, I'd like to a feature I had an opportunity to interview recently on Conversations Live, the radio show, was Amy Friedman, and talk about joy, love, and abundance. She co-founded an organization called Pops the Club. And I had never heard of this organization before. I have to be honest, before the end of last year when I read her an anthology that she put together called Dream Catchers. And what it is, what Pops does is it supports kids who have parents, siblings, or loved ones who have been incarcerated. And the numbers, guys, were just amazing to me. I did not realize when I was interviewing her, she was talking about 1 in 14 children has a parent who is or has been incarcerated. And a lot of times that population is so largely invisible. So what her organization does is give them an opportunity to share their stories through these anthologies. And the funds go to help to not only to impact these families, but also to help them in pursuing their own goals and dreams. I thought that was such an amazing thing that Amy is doing with Pops the Club, and was so glad to have her on the radio show to talk about it. The book is called Dream Catchers, Pops the Club Anthology. It's available now on Amazon. Definitely invite our audience to check it out. These stories are really, they're so connecting, guys, because it really is about being seen, not feeling invisible, but also sharing their emotions that really, I think, will resonate with so many different people. So definitely shout out to Amy Friedman and Pops the Club for the great work that they're doing.
Oh,
Cyrus,
yeah, another great organization and individual who, who's making a big difference in so many children's lives.
Yeah. Absolutely. Cyrus, was there a story, and I don't know exactly how long ago it was when you did the interview, but is there a story in particular maybe that she shared that you found particularly inspiring, or a particular outcome of her work that you found inspiring?
It's so funny you mentioned that. There's a poem actually in the book, Rodney, called Against All Odds by Tensei, and basically saying that even though I have all these odds against me being an immigrant child and going through all these things, the last line of the poem said, I want to live my life unashamed of the truth. And I thought that was so amazing, because I think so many people are embarrassed or made to feel embarrassed for where they come from or what they don't have, but for her to be able to want to embrace who she was, embrace her own truth, I thought was such a powerful thing. So yeah, it's really amazing. I mean, again, to be able to see these young people express themselves this way, it really, I think, is inspiring for all of us, which is why I think it's something that we want to bring attention to here. So again, shout out to Amy Friedman and Pops the Club. Definitely invite you guys to get Dream Catchers. It's an amazing, amazing anthology for sure. Well, we have come to the end of our very first episode of Abundance here. Yeah, this has been such an amazing first episode for me, for sure. I know we're going to be excited that we want you guys to join us every week, either on the radio dial where you're finding us now, or, of course, through the podcast. You guys can simply go to joyloveandabundance.com to be able to visit with us there. But we definitely hope that you will not only come back each week to share your thoughts. As we wrap up here, Patrice, do you have any final words for our audience?
I just think that there's so much joy, love, and abundance to be found, to be chosen, and to be created by each and every one of us. I mean, an 11-year-old boy created so much joy, love, and abundance for others that I think each of us has that opportunity to do that if we're not just focusing on the problem and the pain that we're suffering. If we can actually see, something that will make it better for me and others.
Yeah, what a great point. Rodney, any takeaway from this episode or anything you'd like to share with our audience as we wrap up?
I think small steps. I think none of the stories that we discussed today, or any of the ones that we'll be discussing in the weeks to come, begin with large outcomes overnight. It's taking a small step forward, a small win. One small win after another begets like a snowball, larger and larger wins. So find those small moments of joy, love, of generosity, of abundance. Find those small moments where you can make a small difference or receive a small difference, and that can make all the difference.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and guys, for me, it really is about, and I think the thing that all three of our spotlights this week showed is that we matter, right? I mean, we can make a difference. Whether we are, from a challenging background, experience a challenging situation, or find ourselves in a situation where others may count us out, that we matter. And I think to never give up on ourselves, I think that is the big takeaway I take away from Patrice, your profile, Rodney, yours, and even from Amy Friedman and her work, is in making sure that everyone knows that, and that they're worthy of what you talk about all the time, Patrice, joy, love, and abundance. And that's something that they are worthy of, and definitely not to give up on that. I'm so excited about what's to come with this program, guys. Thank you all so much for being able to share these amazing stories, and we definitely thank you, our audience, for tuning in to Joy, Love, and Abundance. Again, make sure you guys are joining us online at joyloveandabundance.com. That's joyloveandabundance.com. For our radio audience, we'll be back with you guys next week. Our podcast audience, make sure you guys stay tuned. A lot more programs coming. Here we have Rodney-Eric-Lopez, Patrice-Tanaka, and Cyrus-Webb saying until next time, make sure you all make it a great one. Take care.